Children of let me talk to your manager people. What was your most embarrassing moment? When I was young and my mom let me go to the barber by myself for the first time, my mom felt that he didn't cut it short enough. Rather than going back and politely discussing the situation, she screamed and hollered at the guy about him ripping her off. He stood there speechless. The worst part was that I had to get back in the chair and sit there awkwardly while he gave it a second shot, with her standing there directing him. That's terribly awkward. Oh man. 29th birthday last year. She's been like this my whole life. I'd cut ties but dad has Alzheimer's and if I want to see him she comes too. 10-cent fee for parking. 10 cents. A lone dime. Cue screaming, swearing, demanding a manager. The parking lot attendant doesn't have a manager. And then cursing me out and telling me that my being willing to pay a 10-cent parking fee meant I was just another stupid shit-stin poor millennial and this is why you're all broke, you waste all your money. This is why you're all broke, you waste all your money. You can get money back. Time on the other hand. It is post 9/11 America, and I am in LAX with my younger brother and my dad, waiting for a flight. It begins to board, and my dad starts getting argumentative with the lady at the gate because she won't let him board first, with the elderly, veterans, injured veterans, people with very small kids, people with disabilities, etc. My dad was literally none of those things, but proceeds to lose his mind anyway. He starts yelling, shouts that he has a bad back and is sick of this crap, is traveling with kids, points to us, his 2 teenage sons who have walked away from the line and are sitting down out of sheer embarrassment, and when he is told to stop by a man carrying an actual small child in a baby John or whatever, screams at him and says something meant to call attention to the hypocrisy he was experiencing and his just plight as a result, but insult, which everyone else loved, like they were thrilled this butthole was getting escorted out of line. Security talks to him and the lady working the gate as people continue onto the plane, and so my dad becomes irate once more. This time because they're forcing him to get onto the plane later than he would have had he not sought special privileges, and this is therefore overly punitive. And then we were on a plane with all of the people from the line for the next 8 hours, and my dad yelled at a flight attendant because he believed she was ignoring him due to what happened at the gate. So now there was a plane-wide conspiracy to freak up his life. By the time we landed, he'd been in verbal confrontations with all local RAL members, other flight attendants, and sporadic outlaws from other sections. Have you ever been blood related to the most disliked human being on an airplane? Most crying baby on an airplane whines are men, but that's the worst crying baby on an airplane story I've ever heard. I was doing work experience in a cafe kitchen during high school and my parents showed up wanting to be served by me. I wasn't allowed to since I was kitchen staff, so my parents started yelling and screaming at the waitress. The manager came out, told them I was on a break, and they screamed at her too. They were calling out to me, "Get your butt out here and serve us." They only left when the manager threatened to call the police. They were banned from the cafe. I nearly lost my placement. Without it I wouldn't have gotten my qualifications before I graduated. My teacher had my parents come to the school and tore strips off of them. That experience, coupled with the fact that my parents showed no remorse for their behavior, killed any desire I had to work in the food industry. I had to discipline my grandmother when she and my father came to eat during my stint at Crapplebee's. She stated treating my co-workers like crap right out the gate. She's used to being treated like a Chevy Chase Country Club member and that is no excuse, and I had to tell her off about it. Not loudly, more like public mom voice. Thankfully she backed down. My dad pulls this a lot. I have to always bring it back and say, "Dad, this guy did nothing wrong, he is just the messenger, relax." I understand not agreeing with corporate protocol, but don't yell and scream at the guy making $10 an hour, it's unfair. He knows that too. Oh man. My husband's parents are deaf and they insist on talking to the manager all the dang time. Which means my husband ends up having to translate and it's so embarrassing. He always apologizes profusely while at the same time having to translate a bitchy comment. I have a theory that not being able to communicate results in some people feeling like they are being cheated constantly. I've known other people who have had to translate for their parents and be constantly embarrassed by the experience. My mom had to go in for a beating with my principal, but it turned out to be cancelled and no one notified her. She screamed at the office staff while walking out of the office. The principal showed up, so he was screamed at, and then she screamed at me since my bad grades were the reason we were there. This was before school, so a lot of kids and teachers witnessed this. Only bright side was they never bothered calling my mom again. I'm certainly from that type of mother, but my most embarrassing moment came 2 years ago while in Quebec, visiting from the US. This was our first encounter having to speak with someone from the city besides the hotel who was speaking English. It was at a restaurant. Server says something in French. Mom, American. I was so embarrassed. Not even a "I'm sorry. Do you speak English?" Just American. Her and I both only speak English, and she's been to more countries than I have. I have no idea how she can be so crass. My dad screaming at the 16-year-old girl behind the register at Target because he grabbed an item off of a shelf with a sign that said $20, but the item rang up as more than $20. The sign was for an entirely different item. He caused a huge scene and went off on her about how she put the item there on purpose to trick customers. She was genuinely terrified, and my mom and I had to calm everybody down. I once had an old man, like maybe 70, yell at me because a BB cream rang up for $100, not dollar, instead of $50. It was my first week at that place, and the first time I was alone in the register. Thankfully the assistant manager came over and showed him why he was wrong in a sorta condescending way, as he deserved. My stepmom is lactose intolerant and ordered a plate of pasta without the dairy ingredients. They brought everyone else's food out because, as they told her when she ordered, it would take a little extra time to make her a special plate. She blew up at this and yelled at the waiter for not allowing her to eat dinner with her family. The poor waiter came back and apologized and ended up not charging us for most of our meals. She was still extremely rude to him. As we were leaving, our waiter wished us happy holidays, which prompted another scene from my stepmom because they didn't say Merry Christmas. I don't see much of that side of the family anymore. Sounded petty as heck with her. When I was 15, my mom, sister, and I had doctor's appointments, and as it was earlier in the morning we decided to stop and eat to get breakfast, as none of us ate. As it was a Saturday morning, it was quite packed and we only had an hour to get it and eat and make it on time for us to make it to the first appointment. When our order was taken and we waited and waited, my mom got more and more irritated. Eventually she complained to the waitress about how we were in a hurry and what was taking so long. Keep in mind the restaurant had a line of at least 20 people waiting just to sit down, so you can imagine how crowded it was. As my mom kept complaining, my sister and I both were becoming more and more embarrassed and shot her apologetic looks. My mom eventually says that we will just have to leave because we didn't have time for this crap. At this point we started getting looks from other people eating in the restaurant. The waitress then told us she said that she'd have to try to prioritize our meal and that it should be out in a bit. She was also very polite and apologized profusely for everything. It wasn't more than 5 minutes later and she came sprinting to our table with our food in hand and constantly kept tabs on us in case we needed anything. In all honesty, she was the best waitress I think I've ever had at any restaurant, with just how nice she was. We all ate, and it was obvious that my mom was still upset at how long it took for the food to come out. So as we were leaving, my sister decided to lay down a $10 tip for the waitress, but my mom grabbed it and said that they didn't deserve that tip. She stormed to the front and my sister looked at me and just rolled her eyes and walked towards the front with our mom. I stayed at the table to finish my drink as she came by, and that's when I apologized to her about my mom, and then handed her a $20 bill for a tip and thanked her for the service. When I got to the front, there was a line of people who were waiting to check out. Obviously my mom didn't like that and decided that she was done with everything. When we got to pay, she did and then proceeded to ask for a manager. But before she could do that, my sister and I more or less begged her to just come on and let it go. She had already embarrassed us enough. She eventually agreed but still told off the worker who was taking our money. My mom stormed out and my sister and I apologized to the worker and walked out behind her. To this day my mom still complains about the service on that day and how she was in the right to complain about it all. I really don't understand her behavior, and also the fact that she seems totally disconnected of the reality. You and your sister acted very well though. You are nice people. So one time I forgot to pay for something in my college dues. Me and my dad both went to the financial aid office to explain it was a slip of the mind and ask them to take off the fees and we would pay the due. My dad explodes on the girl behind the counter, yelling up a storm after she says that it's not possible to remove the late fee. My dad screams, "Let me talk to your higher up," and the dean gets involved. The girl starts crying and she bolts out the room. It was horrendous. After hours of talking to many people, we get the fine taken off and the due as well as a sort of get out of here please bribe. Instant karma when we get out and there is a parking bill the exact amount that we would have paid for the due and late fee. Yes, I love this. I was with my father and he was buying me my first laptop in the Best Buy we went to had an advertisement sign that was out of place. It implied that the laptop I had chosen was another 25% off or something, but I'm sure if you read the fine print it said a specific model. Anyway, we get to the front and they ring it up and my dad gets pee. He demands a manager and another manager and every discount you could think of, but they cannot bring the 2K laptop down 25%. The sale is not on that model and the sign was out of place. He won't have it and keeps bitching. Eventually he buys it and we leave, but good lord, I wanted to melt into the floor. I ended up nervously wandering away and pretending to be very interested in the candy bars next to the checkout stand because I was just mortified. Side note, dad was a surgeon at his private practice. He was very wealthy. Don't know if my mom does this exact thing, but I've seen her get unreasonably angry at those receipt checkers on the way out if Walmart Target type stores. She says they are accusing her of stealing. They are treating her like a criminal. Mortifying. She doesn't steal. Try telling her they do it to scare the people behind her. That's what we get told in training. The idea is, supposedly, if thieves see honest people being checked they'll give up. My dad once argued with the manager of an auto parts store for almost 30 minutes because they said the rear brakes on his car were disc brakes while my dad insisted they were drum brakes. After all of his yelling he stormed out with me in tow to another store. Once we got there he calmly purchased a set of disc style brakes. I was with my friend and her mom in the grocery store. Her mom swiped her credit card to pay and the payment didn't process and the cashier asked her to swipe one more time and she refused and made a scene. My friend looked like her insides were curdling. Poor thing LMAO. She was so embarrassed that her mom was making a scene and in front of me no less. My grandmother brought underpants she had purchased a few days before back to the store and demanded a discount because they had gone on sale and she wanted the difference back. She made 11-year-old me accompany her to learn the value of money. All I learned was $1.50 is not worth the embarrassment. She made 11-year-old me accompany her to learn the value of money. All I learned was $1.50 is not worth the embarrassment. My dad used to talk about the price of one's dignity. Getting made over $1.50 means that you value your dignity less than the cost of a cheeseburger, which is absurd. I ordered a chicken fried steak at a Jim's once. I like a lot of salt on my food, so when it arrived a little salty, I didn't even notice and thought it tasted fine. My mom kept asking for a piece of it, even though she had her own meal, so I let her have a bite. She immediately squinched up her face and said it was too salty and tasted bad, then called the waiter and tried to make her take it back, even though it wasn't her meal and I was enjoying it. I hope you let her know that you're never letting her taste your food ever again after that. Outback Steakhouse had this limited edition bacon mac and cheese, or something like that. It was a fancy side dish, so it cost a bit more than a normal side dish like mashed potatoes. My mother lost her goddamn freaking crap because the server said there'd be a $2 fee for substituting the bacon mac and cheese as a side with a steak entree. I sat across from her at the table and stared as she threw her temper tantrum, willing myself to just stop existing or at least die. She kept pointing to the menu and snapping, "But why does it have to cost more?" The poor waiter was so patient, and when the manager came out he told her the same thing. It's a $2 surcharge because the item is limited edition and is a bit more expensive for the restaurant to make. They can't make an exception. But logic, class, humility, my mother, death first. She took the high road and stormed out of Outback Steakhouse over $2 extra for bacon mac and cheese that no one was forcing her to order. I made the excuse of going to the bathroom as she went to her car and left a $10 on the table for the server. I would have left more had I had it. Well presented. This made me laugh. My mom did this all the time. She would tell me to walk away and go play somewhere else while she screamed at the top of her lungs so everyone in the store could hear her cursing the manager and the employee out. I always hoped she got whatever she wanted because if not that meant she was likely going to beat the crap out of me when we got home with the restraining belt. I hope this is a joke because if not I feel really bad that you grew up that way. It's not a specific one-time thing, but my mom regularly embarrasses me by trying to get deals at places. It's one thing if it's an antique store or something, but she'll ask it at corporate places where it's very obvious the kid making $9 HR doesn't have any way to adjust pricing for no reason. And usually before she jumps into this speech, she will begin by asking the person how much it costs, and when they tell her, she'll say wow, that is really expensive. Not sure it's worth that or something borderline insulting, implying they are overcharging or trying to rip her off. I just don't understand why she thinks insulting the business or product straight off the bat is going to make them want to cut her a deal. In fact, when I worked in retail, I knew very well that the person who comes in with a bad attitude apropos nothing is usually a terrible customer who is going to cause more problems long term, and I typically dissuade them from buying anything, not try to actively cater to them. I've tried to sort of guide her into not behaving like that, but I don't know, there's nothing I can really do in the moment, so I usually just roll my eyes and try to stand far away from her so people don't realize we're together. I've been a cashier for years, so I've seen a lot of the let me talk to your manager people, and have seen their children or spouses cringe. One really stands out. I've had a regular customer for years, really nice girl. Had one of those the good ones are already taken moments when I met her. Now she's always polite and friendly and completely understanding when things go wrong. After a few years she came in with her mother. Now I knew her mother was coming because she mentioned that she was dreading the visit. Well, when they got to the register the chip reader wasn't working right. Well, of course the mom had the usual explosion talk to the manager in a very condescending manner, the usual. But my regular had walked outside the store the instant it started. I went outside to seep off the porch at about the same time. Yes, I had ulterior motives, and got to hear what happened after the mom came out. The daughter read her the riot act, said that now that she has kids she won't permit anyone who acts like that around her children. She doesn't want her son to pick up bad habits, and that if she doesn't shape up then she will have to cut ties. That led to another explosion from the mom. Things like that's not fair. You can't do this to me. I'm your mother. Act. Ended up with my regular walking home because her mother drove. Never saw the mother again. Damn. I love that she actually held her responsible though. That's one of the most important things. I don't think I could sit around and endure family or friends treating other humans like garbage without reacting. My mom wanted to fix her watch. Goes to a store. She talks to a trainee that seemed reasonably clueless. Mom calls for the manager, which she swears to this day gave her attitude. She just tried to calm my flaming mother. Mom pulled my arm out of my body and out of the store. Never in my life did I pity my own existence that much. I'm on the other side of the counter. My whole family has worked in hospitality, so we know not to scream at your server, and last week I had a group in who were really lovely all evening. Then it came to pay. They kicked off about a bottle of wine, and it escalated to the point where I was being screamed at over the bar. One middle-aged man even went on to mimic my laugh. Pretty immature when you're outright making fun of an 18-year-old girl who's trying her best to keep it together. Anyway, the laugh mimicker eventually paid, signed the receipt and threw it at me, then stormed off. I called, "Sir, you've left your card." His youngish son was still at the bar, and I gave it to him and apologized again. He looked so embarrassed and apologized to me and told me not to worry about it. Must be pretty tough being associated with people that'll be outright rude and bitchy over a bottle of wine. My mom wanted to return a product. We had to wait until someone could attend, which was about 5 minutes. She got so irritated that she yelled at some worker to get a manager. Manager comes and she just talks crap on him about how there should be workers and we shouldn't have to wait for someone to show up. At that point I left and she came back with the product and no refund. She got kicked out and basically banned for like a month. When I told my mom I failed my driving test for the 3rd time, she stormed into the DMV and raised holy heck, yelling at the driving tester lady and demanding she change her mind and let me pass. I absolutely never wanted to get behind the wheel of a car again. But my mom assumed this was because the driving tester had ruined my confidence, and not because my mother had magnified my failure so much. My mill is like this, and my wife is just done with it. She's so over it. Last time something like this happened was my Phil's birthday. My wife ended up apologizing to the waiter and the manager of the restaurant. We very seldom go out to eat with my in-laws unless it's to one very specific, slightly expensive restaurant of which they're regulars. These people aren't referred to as regulars, they are groaned about upon entry, usually something along the lines of "I hate these people. They come in every week and are always awful. If you are a pain in the butt and or tip poorly, you're not a regular, just a constant nuisance." I vividly remember an incident in a restaurant with my grandma many years ago. Was with her, my mom, and my sister. We had all ordered, and it was taking a while to arrive. No big deal, it was busy. Everyone was trying their best, and sometimes you just gotta wait. The waitress comes by to check on us. "Would you guys like some more water?" GMA. "No, but we'd like our lunch, please." The girls, meaning my sister and I, are getting hungry. Neither of us had said a single peep about being hungry, or anything else, because she was always too absorbed in her conversation with my mom to pay much attention to us. I was only about 10 or so, but I was mortified that she would be so rude, and so sorry for that waitress that I snuck back and apologized to her for grandma's behavior before we left. That sounds kinda adorable in a somewhat sad way. Just this little 10-year-old sneaking back to apologize. I bet she appreciated that a lot. I did it to my mom actually. I got very mad at a customer service lady and said, "Well, I guess you need to have your hand held." My mom was mortified. I was mortified when the anger went away later. At least you see your fault and were remorseful. Most people can't say that after they've acted like a complete dickhead. I wasn't there to witness it, thankfully, and at least my mom was self-aware enough to retell this story with herself as the butt of the joke. When I was in junior high, my mom was concerned that my taste in music meant there was something wrong with me. She thought I was too interested in dead people. I liked the Beatles, The Doors, Queen, Janis Joplin, and I loved Nirvana. I begged for Nirvana CDs for Christmas and birthday gifts. When Unplugged in New York came out, something changed and she softened enough to at least go into the store and look at the CD case to see if it was something that she wouldn't mind seeing under the tree. Imagine her horror when she finds a small razor blade tucked inside the case. Here was a band where the lead singer committed suicide and they were selling the CD with razor blades included. She was outraged and found the nearest employee to give him a piece of her mind. Oh, that I could have been there to watch him explain it was the anti-theft device. She was so mortified she fled the store, and I still did not get my Nirvana CD. At one point, it was in the late 80s, I wanted to take a picture of the restaurant in and out to send to some friends who lived on the East Coast. So we went there to eat and my dad took a couple of pictures of the building. A worker comes out, a kid, probably 16 or 17, and he says to my dad, very calmly and matter of fact, "My manager says that people aren't allowed to take pictures of the building." Without missing a beat, my dad says, "Go tell your manager to put his stick up his butt." I was shocked and felt bad for this kid who probably didn't want to go out to talk to him in the first place. Then we went and got our food and I could just feel everyone there glaring at us. Without missing a beat, my dad says, "Go tell your manager to put his stick up his butt." I was shocked and felt bad for this kid who probably didn't want to go out to talk to him in the first place. Then we went and got our food and I could just feel everyone there glaring at us. Your dad seems like a cool guy, except he got the food ordering and crap talking backwards. My cousin's dad tried to beat a security guard up because he assumed he knew more than the people working at Curry's PC World. Not so much embarrassing as frustrating and unexpected. My dad was this guy for a long time, mostly at restaurants though. He worked in restaurant equipment for a while and never let go of whatever imaginary standard for food service he'd cooked up while in the industry. There was a steakhouse in my hometown that we'd frequent, and of all the times we went there, I can probably count on one hand the number of nights his steak was cooked to his satisfaction and it wasn't sent back after a long chat with the manager. It was so predictable. I started to wonder if this was just his way of gaming the joint for a free meal. Flash forward to some random weekday night my senior year of high school and my family stops into a bar and grill type place we'd never been to. The old man orders a sandwich and chips. They bring it out and much to our shock an industrial sized razor blade is mixed in with my dad's chips. I had two thoughts. 1. The universe picked the wrong guy for this balls. If his steakhouse behavior was any indication, someone might get killed here tonight. And 2. We are going to be rich. I could already imagine the lawsuit and news story that would inevitably follow. It felt like a blessing in disguise. For a moment I felt like his entire history as a restaurant patron had been preparation for this moment and this razor blade. Yet, as the drama of the moment ebbed, and after a quick chat with the manager, he happily let them comp our meal and that was the end of it. He seemed satisfied that it was more likely the fault of the chip maker and we left it at that. I still don't know what to make of it 15 years later. I found a staple in my salad a few weeks ago. They gave us the salad for free. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.